Okay, so the only other words I know in English spelled with AE are Aegis and Ether. So for simplicity's sake, I will be pronouncing this game Daemon X Machina. Customizable mech suits? Sign me up! Mech games are always one of those genres I think sound great on paper, but never quite live up to the expectation. Then there is Daemon X Machina. I was through 10 hours of this game before I even realized it. The story's premise is that you are a new mercenary mech pilot, learning the ropes, and slowly taking on bigger and harder challenges. Pretty much your normal mission tropes. Kill X amount of these, protect this, destroy that. There are a lot of post-mission briefing twists though, to the point where I started asking what was actually going to be the mission once I got to the mission site. You are trying to protect the world from an AI, known as the Immortals, from destroying mankind. Or at least that's where it starts, the story. Most missions you will be teamed up with other mercenaries from different factions. Now, this was absolutely overwhelming for me to try to keep track of. Overall, it isn't too important to know who most of the characters are, but this made it very difficult to invest any interest in their stories. It seems like a waste making so many characters, with different personalities, goals, and cross-character relationships, just to birdshot them all at you. It would be much easier to keep track of all the characters and factions if they were introduced in chunks. For example, run 2 or 3 missions in a row with Bullet Works, then the next few missions with Innocence, then Western 7 for a few. Instead, you work with X from Faction 1, Y from Faction 2, and Z from Faction 3 for one mission, then with Q from Faction 1, K from Faction 4, and C from Faction 5 the next. And after said mission, you may not see XYZ again for another dozen missions. Sound confusing yet? I did like the graphic style used for this game. The cell shading, plus the over-the-top actions really nailed the anime aesthetic. Plus, with how much time you spend in pre-mission briefing dialogue and cutscenes, the cell shading style was an excellent choice. The mech customization is top-notch. There are tons of weapon choices to make for the 6 separate positions on the mech. Each of your 2 arms can use a weapon. You then get backup weapons on each side, referred to as pylons. These weapon choices include ranged weapons, such as assault rifles, SMGs, or lasers, while also having the choice to use melee weapons, like swords and maces. You can even use a physical shield. If you choose to, you can start off using assault rifles to soften up a target, then switch to a sword after closing the distance to deal the finishing blow. Or, because I like versatility so much, use assault rifles until I run out of ammo, and then switch to assault rifles. Personally, I didn't really care for the melee gameplay. It felt very stiff. You would use like a dash kind of attack, and then be left with a long delay or recovery after use. So even though swords do hit hard, I felt very exposed after an attack. A lot of the closer range guns felt a little off also. Shotguns had massive spread, the flamethrower had terrible range, and the acid gun caused an explosion that lingered in place, instead of sticking to a moving target. You then get to choose from shoulder weapons, homing and heat-seeking missiles, Autobots that'll attack targets on their own, even a railgun if you're willing to land and charge it up. The auxiliary slot is more used for utility features. Examples include flares, which will break missile locks, extra stamina, extra ammo, or like a radar jammer. Pretty much all the things that help you without doing damage. You also have a ton of armor options, some increasing your firepower, some built for additional movement speed, others for close range or melee combat, and even some that concentrate more on overall defense. You can even get weapon arms, which are stronger versions of the guns you can equip, but at the cost of not being able to change out the weapons for that arm. You also don't really have to worry about your gearing decisions. Most of the game, my gear choices were just slapped together, or testing out different weapons, so it isn't too important to get the perfect build. although I'm not sure if there's content after the story where gear might matter. And if for whatever reason your mech sustains too much damage, you can also fight outside of your suit. You are given a standard loadout that is only affected by your choices made in the lab. The lab upgrades add cybernetic enhancements to your character, which will give extra stats to either your outer form or your arsenal. These enhancements will also change the look of your character. I actually enjoyed watching my character slowly become a robot. You can also get temporary buffs for your next mission by visiting the ice cream parlor. I did not spend much time here, because I was always trying to put my earned credits towards permanent upgrades. But the different ice cream combinations looked like an interesting mechanic once you finished upgrades. Oh yeah, there is also a weapon development tab, and a shop to buy new weapons or armor. A mild critique, but it felt weird that your character had to physically visit the ice cream parlor or lab, but your access to the shop and development were through the computer. I also want to talk about the controls. This game definitely feels like it was made with controller use in mind, instead of mouse and keyboard. Menus are navigated with the keyboard instead of using the mouse. Changing weapons in combat also feels off. Pressing Z pulls up a menu to choose the left arm's weapon. You then either press Z again for the left pylon, or C for the right. You are also given the option of dropping the currently equipped weapon by pressing X. The same is done by pressing C for the right arm. While these options for picking which pylon might be nice when using an armor gun arm, a cycle option would feel more natural to me. I was only really changing my guns when I was running low on ammo, and would just try to mash whatever to get new guns out while in the middle of firefights. There was little finesse to what weapon went out on what hand. Changing your mech's mode was explained as... Actually, let's come back to the controls after we introduce some other mechanics. So, there's this stuff called femto. Of my understanding from the story, it is some super awesome material that gives massive amounts of energy that mankind is trying to extract and use for their betterment. Long story short, immortals run on femto also, so there is a lot of conflict around femto extraction sites. Anyway, your mech requires femto to run some of its functions. The mech will passively charge femto, or actively gain femto from other sources. Femto is used to power laser weapons. It is also used as the power supply for a skill called Mirage, which makes a double of your mech. Once you regain enough femto, you get the option of picking between 3 femto armaments, or as I simply refer to as mech modes. The first mode is Assault, which increases your damage output, but also lowers your defense. The second mode is Wing, which allows you to boost without using stamina, but also lowers your defense. And the third mode, Shield, acts as a barrier, absorbing the damage your mech would sustain. All 3 of these modes have limited use before going on a short cooldown. The controls were explained using the F keys to scroll through, which felt like a poor key placement to me. But I accidentally found the 1, 2, and 3 keys could be used to activate each mode. If I save one person from trying to use the F keys for this mechanic, then this review has succeeded. After 10 hours of gameplay, I wasn't quite through with the story mode, but I am looking forward to finishing it. The game's excellent mech mechanics and overall very enjoyable gameplay lived up to my expectations. While too many characters are thrown at you without organization, the dialogue is solid and engaging. The story is also quite solid, but not groundbreaking. The controls can sometimes feel weird though, as can the menu organization and navigation. I would say though, if you are looking for a game to scratch your anime or comic mech combat itch, this game will not disappoint. Thanks for watching.
Damaged. At this rate, the transport will be incapable of flight. Please destroy it.
Can't we just grab the cargo and leave before it falls out of the sky?
That action is not authorized.